Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now we've got a lot to cover today in today's video because not only are we going to get a new burst character come along in the next batch of banners with Ultimecia as well as her LD boards that come along, but we're also getting another brand new LD weapon in the form of Penelo as well as an absolutely stunning and gorgeous costume to go with it as well. And then of course we've got a Ultimecia Heretic mission to go along with that. We've got loads and loads to cover, so if that's all stuff that you guys are all interested in, then as always stay tuned and keep on watching. As with all of my videos, don't forget to check out all of the social media links in the description box below, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord and Patreon. On Twitch this week, obviously every Sunday morning I'm going to be playing some FF14 and we've got a lot to be talking about with all the new trailers, all the new stuff that's coming out, so definitely come and check me out on Twitch if you want to come and kiki about Final Fantasy XIV. And then with Opera Omnia, obviously I'm going to stream every event as it comes out the day of its release, so definitely come and find me on Twitch and give us a follow if you would like to be a part of that as well. On Patreon, I shout out one of my patrons every time I release a video or series of videos, and today that person is going to be Lil Rose May. So thank you very much for your support. As you can see, they are as big a fan of Beatrix as I am, as that's who's on their title card. And if you would like to perhaps get a title card of your own, join in with Would You Pull, join in with voice chats with myself and more. We've got more like features coming to Patreon very soon. Then perhaps consider becoming a patron yourself. Don't forget to hit all of those links in the description box below for other resources pertaining to Opera Omnia, and of course all of the other content creators out there besides myself. So first things first, let's take a look at the banners themselves and what is going to be featured on them that would make you want to use your resources. So this time it's a little bit different again from the burst banners that we had with Ramza, because Makina was a returning character with his LD, whereas this time around, instead of getting a character come back with an LD they've already had, it's going to be a character that hasn't already had one. So on one banner, we're going to have Ultimecia's burst only, so not her LD, not her EX, none of the rest of her kit, but we instead have Penelo's LD, which is brand new, as well as the rest of her kit, and we'll also have Cyan and Thancred along for the ride with their EXs. Well, personally speaking, I don't have Cyan or Thancred, so I know it would be quite nice to pick up some extra ones that are missing there. And then Ultimecia's own banner is just her when it comes to the LD. She's the only character that has one on there, so it's going to be her EX, her LD, her burst, everything for Ultimecia. And then you're going to have Palom and Papalymo along for the ride with their EXs. So we're actually going to start by looking at Ultimecia, because her LD actually isn't new, but it does get some new stuff due to the LD boards that are coming out along with it. So if you haven't used Ultimecia before, Ultimecia's primary goal is taking lots of turns all at once to inflict as much damage with AoE damage as much as possible, and doing slight debuffs at the same time, whilst basically just hogging turns. So Protean Swords is basically, at this point, just a Brave HP attack where bravery hits will sort of alternate between the enemies and you'll end up with an HP attack at the end of it. Honestly, its original purpose was to build up the stacks of Maleficium, which is a framed buff on her that is a max brave and attack buff, but when you get to the 5 stacks of this, you get plus versions of her 2 main skills. Now, because her LD actually maxes this out instantly, you're not going to need to kind of spend time gearing up for this as much. But so now pretty much Protean Swords is just a high skill count, but relatively, it's just a brave HP attack at this point, to be honest. Hell's Judgment, on the other hand, is still really strong. It's got some gravity damage based on it. It reduces the enemy's damage, then does 4 hits of bravery, and then does 100% HP damage to each target. So given that you get a lot of uses out of this thanks to the new buffs on her LD, like you only ever got 4 before, but you get free skill uses out of her EX, and therefore you'd use them as much as possible. This is kind of a go-to thing that you're looking for. It does also inflict a frame debuff, which reduces the enemy's defense and also inflicts sap on them. So that's nice as well. Her EX is where she starts to come into her own. She gets another frame buff that increases her max bravery and attack, and she also gets a special effect, which is just a counter for the next 2 turns that she gets it for free. She gets free turn, she gets an instant turn, so she gets 3 turns in a row straight away. And you get, because Apocalypse itself has an instant turn rate and is a free turn, it adds up quite quickly. And then when you put in your ingots and everything, you got a free skill use whenever you use this. So the idea is that you would use Apocalypse, then you would use presumably Hell's Judgment, and then you'd use your other 2 turns however you saw fit. But the key thing, the combo that was originally with this is that because it took 3 skills to instantly charge Nightmare or Apocalypse back up again, you'd go free skill and then 1 of each of her other skills, and then the EX would be back up again, and then you'd do the whole thing all over again. And obviously it was nice. And then her LD, the first time it came around, this is what you would see with it. It's a Brave HP attack, group HP, like split HP, it's nothing special. Maxes out her Maleficium buff straight away, so that's actually really helpful for her because you don't want to spend too long like having to maximize like the efficiency of getting the Maleficium buff and then keeping it. Because, like, before she got her LD, if you ran out of her Maleficia buff, it was absolute curtains for her. And you'd have to build them all back up again, and it was a nightmare. She also gets another framed buff, which is Sorceress's Intervention, which is Brave Regen and Brave Overflow, which is actually quite nice for her, because she takes so many turns, and her biggest weakness is that her bravery damage, or her potencies on her attacks, are really low. And this is, unfortunately, still the case. But having Brave Regen helps her actually dealing HP damage quite a lot. She also got, or the brand new now, she gets LD boards, and this actually adds a great amount to Shockwave Pulsar. It now, gravity reduces the enemy's bravery to a quarter before you start doing bravery attacks, so you're pretty much guaranteed to break when you use it. It then becomes a double HP dump, so instead of an 8-hit Brave HP attack, it then becomes a 4-hit HP, 6-hit HP attack, which is obviously significantly better. It also regenerates a skill use of Hell's Judgment, which is really nice. So, in all honesty, because of this, you may not want to necessarily use your LD straight away and go back to the traditional way of building up your stacks of Maleficium using Protean Swords and things like that to try and build up so that you're getting as many uses of Hell's Judgment as possible. Because between this and the free one that you'll get from using the EX, you'll actually get a lot more uses out of it than you used to before. Sorceress's Intervention itself also gets a duration additive, and it also adds an effect to it which increases her attack slightly more. This is all good stuff, like it's all stuff that definitely Ultimecia needed, but it doesn't really fix the problem of her bravery shaving capabilities being really quite poor, apart from when you're using Hell's Judgment or Shockwave Pulsar. Having the gravity damage on there does help it quite a lot, but in terms of building up bravery, her attack, her Protean Swords definitely, is still considered quite weak comparatively to other attacks. But she does also get a burst, and just by having a burst, her stats will be increased, her base attack will be increased just by having a stronger weapon. And her bursted weapon is actually quite unique. It's quite different from like most things that we've seen from other characters, in that instead of it being like a party buff, it is more like manipulative of the enemies. It also has the most badass animation going. It's so good. It's a 15-hit Brave HP attack with maxed out like 100% HP damage to everything that it hits, and it also gives her the burst effect for 3 turns after use. All targets lose their next turn when Ultimecia attacks. So this actually kind of brings her more along the lines of a Miditelian and things like that, where you get not only her ability to manipulate her own turns, but she can just outright delete the enemies. So there are certain situations where this will be really amazing, and then there will be other situations where you would actually kind of value the burst effect of a different character that's buffing the party up rather than anything else. But deleting 3 turns is pretty good, like especially when you're getting free uses out of Hell's Judgment, which is 100% AoE, then you get the Shockwave Pulsar to regenerate there, and then you get the Apocalypse to get another one. The actual burst phase for Ultimecia, under the right circumstances, can actually be really powerful. But the best way to use Ultimecia is to pair her up with characters that can augment her damage, because Ultimecia is going to be your primary damage dealer if you're using her, but obviously her primary function isn't actually damage. It's kind of just taking lots of turns and then eating into those turns to take away enemy HP. With Lufenia orbs and things like that, not always the best way to go about things. Sometimes you just want to deal a lot of damage in one turn, and because Ultimecia spreads her turns out, like across multiple, using the Griever magics from Apocalypse, using like just trying to take up lots of turns using either her burst ability, things like that. Sometimes it doesn't work out in your favour, but if you pair her up with characters that can increase her HP damage, so Dark Knight Cecil, Balthier, etc., or someone that has Enchant in Peril, so like any Enchant in Peril, so you've got lightning-based ones, we've got Kryl coming up soon, who's a perfect candidate for that, or, you know, even Guy, characters like that, the people who can bolster her offensive capabilities. Ramza, also fantastic fantastic with her as well. There's lots of ways of making it so that Ultimecia's damage output is actually really, really strong. But is she like an absolute must-have burst character? If you've got characters like a mid-Italian and stuff like that, then you kind of already know the kind of thing you're getting into when it comes to Ultimecia, so it depends really. Like, I think that a lot of people will want Ultimecia, but I don't think she's as mandatory as, say, Lightning was, Noctis was, or Paladin Cecil will be. She's definitely really nice to have though. In terms of core abilities, etc., they're okay. Like, they're good in that they have the gravity damage in them. Like, having Shockwave Pulsar and Hell's Judgment, like, access to both of them is quite nice if you want gravity damage and you're going, oh god, they've got too much bravery, I need to bring that down a peg. It's decent, but it's kind of beige when you compare it to the likes of Jack that's coming out a couple of days later, or Caius who's only just been, or Ramza even. There's a lot of characters that you would rather take than Ultimecia unless you specifically wanted gravity damage and not instant break, so something like X-Death's event that's just been and gone. With her high armor, I love the keystone, the debuffing keystone. I think it's great, but the reality is that it's very unlikely that Ultimecia, unless in perfect circumstances, is going to be breaking that bravery damage limit. So it's good to have. If you can set it up so that she can break that limit, then great. Then yeah, I would say it was worth it. But otherwise, I think it was a take it or leave it kind of deal. And in terms of artifacts, she has a C50 that increases her stats, so like that you'll want, including her initial bravery, which she obviously has a regen off of, and then attack 108. She wants as much attack as she can physically get, so get as much damage as you can across all those multiple turns. Now, not only are we getting Ultimecia and the extensions to her LD boards, etc., we're also going to be getting Penelo and her LD as well. Now, Penelo's LD is really something interesting because it's a great LD to have, but I still think that the essence of Penelo is in the base of her kit as well as her EX, her fantastic EX that's been used for eons at this point. But basically, like, in the interest of trying to keep this video as short as possible, I'll gloss over Penelo because she's been featured numerous times before. Penelo's main role is as a buffer. So she has Haste Rumba, which she can level up over the course of time in order to provide a speed buff, attack buff, an offensive based aura that it makes it so that your party just does more damage in general, and she gets a pretty nice HP plus off of it where she can do sort of like hit counts and everything, etc. She also gets free turns off of using Haste Rumba as well, so it doesn't add to your turn count, and it's usually an instant turn as well. Then you get Regen Waltz, which is a slightly slower one, so it's slightly less likely to go straight instantaneously, but you get Brave Regen, HP Regen, so when you suddenly need to go on the defensive, then you can go, oh, I can Regen Waltz. She's very much kind of got everything covered when it comes to using her as a support character, and then when you've got the Regen Waltz up, your HP plus Brave plus becomes more based around batterying the party, etc. Now, her EX was always absolutely fantastic, in no small part due to its fast recast rate, but the fact that it reduces HP damage, or it reduces damage based on your initial bravery rather than anything else. It's not gravity based, it's not anything else, but the chances are it will take your opponent to 0 bravery specifically. It's also an instant turn as well, so she can act straight after she does it, and then after you've used after you've done everything with ingots, etc., it also basically makes it so the HP damage is fixed, or it always has been, like even without ingots, etc. So you always get the same amount of HP damage with an instant turn after it. It will also never break the enemy, it will reduce their bravery to 0. So there's a lot of nice things I can say about Intercession as well. Like it increases the levels of her buffs up, or her dances. It also makes it so that she gets a free skill use on the first turn so that you can get started straight away. And then, like with 3 out of 3, it just makes it so that you reduce the enemy's bravery much, much higher, and it also heals the party on top of it, which healing on a fast casting EX is always fantastic. Now, going into her LD, Evanescence, I sit there and I say I think that her EX is like the shining star of her kit. Her LD is nothing to sniff at either. First of all, it removes all debuffs from the party. The fact that we've had Balthier already, and the fact that we've got Penelo, and then Theodore does something similar to this as well. Azuna is the name of the game recently, and it does show across a lot of different Lufenia missions as well. It then does a 4-hit, basically the LD boards for this just make it so that it does more damage and it's just a little bit stronger and has 4 hits instead of 3. And then it does sort of like, it makes it so you've got 100% AoE damage on Penelo, which is unusual for this point in time because most of her stuff is single target damage or not damaging at all. And it also gives all of your party framed buffs for speed, HP, bravery regen, as well as attack up. So basically everything you would have gotten from both of her dances at once, while also adding on another effect called Liberty Dancer, which is a special effect that sort of hovers above like Griever magics, that kind of thing. That does quite a lot, especially considering how long it lasts. It lasts for 16 turns, and it raises your party's initial bravery and max bravery, and increases party's gained brave overflow for, by 20% across the board. And all of it is it's just nice. It rounds her out very well. It means that she's able to keep up with everything constantly. She's actually dealing damage now, where she wasn't dealing so much damage before, but because of the speed buffs to your party, she was paying dividends in your damage. The only issue when it comes to Penelo is that because a lot of her kit is inframed buffs, especially with her LD now having inframed speed up, HP regen, brave regen, and obviously because she's then giving attack up to the party as well, and then she has her own dance as well on top of that. She's giving 4 framed buffs and an unframed buff to herself, and then 3 framed buffs and an unframed buff to her party members. So you're going to need to be really careful who you take along with Penelo, so that you're not battling it out amongst your party members for buffs, because it can get pretty ugly pretty quickly. There are some characters you straight up just can't use Penelo with if you want to use them to their maximum efficiency. Characters like Beatrix, to a certain extent Ramza. There's a lot of characters that just clash. So she's very much like the Kefka of the buffing world, where Kefka would be fighting with people for framed debuffs, Penelo is fighting people for framed buffs. But because she does so much consolidated into one unit, she's got the regen, she's got the battery, she's got the healing, she's now got the battery damage or the gravity damage through her EX. She's had that for ages, but she's now got Izuna across the board, so she can fit all of those buffs on. She's actually really, really good. There are reasons that you wouldn't take her to a particular fight, but honestly I think that she does pay off in the end. Then to round things off when it comes to Penelo, we actually have had access to her regen waltz call for a little while now, because she was one of the first characters to get her level 80, and we already know it's a pretty solid one to have. Having the brave regen and HP regen to your party is really, really, really good already. But honestly, I actually kind of love her LD call, because you get the Ezunaga, remove all debuffs from party, you get the 100% AoE HP attack off of it as well, and then you get the initial bravery and max bravery and the brave overflow as well, and it just adds up to all being a really nice package. It's just a nice extra thing that you can have for safety. I think it's not one that you're going to take along for damage, but in terms of safety, you're actually getting a pretty good deal when it comes to LD calls on Penelo. And then with her high armor, she has the same high armor as Ramza and other support characters as well. And I think that it's nice to have, but I also don't think it's necessary for Penelo. I think she can function perfectly well without it, just like Ramza, because she provides so much already. I just think that she's just doesn't really need it. And then when it comes to her artifact, she actually is slightly different, because everything she does scales off of her initial bravery. Her EX scales off of initial bravery. Her regens scale off of it. She wants as much initial bravery as possible, and then because she's such a battery-based character, max bravery certainly doesn't hurt either. She doesn't have a C50 or anything fancy, because she's one of the earliest characters going. And then, like I said earlier, when it came to her LD boards, all her LD boards really do are make it so that you're doing slightly more damage with it, you get an extra brave hit, but you're not really taking Penelo because you want her as a primary damage dealer. You want her to enable other damage dealers whilst also giving such a large number of buffs and nice things to your party as a whole. She's a character I very highly value, in that I think she just brings along so many different things to your party that even though she can be kind of awkward to build around, I just think that it's worth it. So now that we've gone over the characters, and there was a lot to go over with the characters, if I've missed any small details on any of them, then I apologise, but I wanted to make sure the video wasn't ridiculously long. We can now talk about the event that's coming along with Ultimecia and Penelo, which is going to be a Heretic mission. And the Lufenia mission for this one is up against the Death Machines and the Shift Frame, which are enemies we've seen before. The Shift Frame was actually one of Vane's primary bosses once upon a time, but it's slightly different this time. And basically, This is all out damage. All you want from this is damage because there's no real way to increase the Lufenia orb except to just get the damage through as quickly as possible. So basically, the shift frame gets its orb when it goes under 80% HP, and then it disappears at 50% and then comes back at 30% HP, and then you have to kill it before its orb goes off. And as long as its bravery is under 20,000, the Lufenia orb counter goes up by 1. But obviously, given that your turn takes it down by 1, it only ever breaks even. There's no way of increasing it outside of a summon or a burst so that you can push it back up again. Otherwise, it's just going to keep ticking up and down at the same time. Not only that, but it also summons adds in death machines. Now, these are actually very common enemies that we've seen across the game. But this time around, they actually have Lufenia orbs. They have 20 turns, and there is nothing that you can do to stop these from going off. You have to kill them before that orb goes off. So you just need damage and a lot of it. And because there are adds and everything, AoE damage is where it's going to be at. So characters like Balthea, admittedly, Balthea actually is really good for this. But the enemies are really heavily resistant to ranged. So Balthea is really good for this if you bring an Enchanter Impaler along with you as well. Otherwise, he's kind of dead in the water. But other than that, you just want AoE damage. Ultimecia's main function here is to basically make it so that the enemies aren't getting their turns, because obviously when an enemy takes their turn, the Lufenia orb counts down by 2 instead of 1 on your turns. So by having Ultimecia just going, no, my turn, my turn, my turn, my turn, constantly with Apocalypse, etc., you've got more time to get those 100% AoE Hell's Judgments off, and you've got more time to get those death machines dead before they do anything untoward. So you have to kill them as much as possible. But not only that, but when the shift frame has a thing where it will float and it will land, etc., when it floats, it will put loads of frame debuffs on your party, which is where Penelo would come in, or again Balthea. And you need to kind of cleanse those off so that you're able to continue to deal damage. You get poison, HP poison, etc., and it basically is there to block off your buffs. So that's where Penelo comes into it as well. And it also, you also get dispelled and inflicted on the debuffs when you hit them under half HP. So that's another reason to bring along somebody like Penelo, so that you can get rid of those debuffs and then reapply the buffs after they've been dispelled. So obviously you want as hard hitting damage dealers as you can possibly get. So you want Ultimecia for obvious reasons. Ramza is still really good for this because he's got all those buffs as well. Like, he can get on top of things beforehand. So with the frame debuffs, if you have enough framed buffs on beforehand, so Penelo, Ramza, etc., then they don't get applied to you because there's no room for them. Obviously this is why the boss dispels you halfway through so that you can then put it back on. But characters like Guy, Gladio, etc., your tanky characters are going to be really helpful so that you can make sure that the enemies are focused on you. Any kind of off-turn damage is helpful, but honestly, you want faster characters. So while characters like Firion, etc. are strong, you want characters that can just get the damage done. Lightning is still going to be really helpful here. Cloud has still got a lot of damage going for him, but even if he is a little on the slow side. Amiditelion is actually still useful here as well to stop them from getting turns, certainly to close things out. And then if you don't have Ultimecia yourself, I didn't mention it during the portion of the video where we talk about her, but she is actually a fantastic friend unit. Because you crack that burst straight away, then the next 3 turns you get 100% AoE damage on whatever attack you're doing, whether it be Hell's Judgment or whatever, and then you're just suddenly going in and deleting the turns while you're at it, and it's just really, really strong. And there are a lot of reasons to take Ultimecia as a friend unit. So basically, you just need to get the damage in as quickly as possible, and there are numerous ways of doing that, so hopefully you guys will find your own ways of doing so. So now we come to the big question of the video. Of course, should you be pulling for Ultimecia or Penelo? Now, there's 2 banners here, which if you have nothing on here, I don't have Ultimecia's LD as of yet because she avoided me the first time she came around. But besides, if you are missing everything on here, there's a lot to pull for here. But they're both very good characters. Honestly, these next couple of weeks, everyone is worth pulling for, at least to some extent. So whether you decide to pull on all of them, or none of them, or some or not, is going to depend entirely on your situation. Now with Ultimecia has delete, or turn delete in her burst. Now it's very strong, but it's only in her burst. So bear that in mind, that if you're only going to get to use it once, and if you're taking that, you're not taking a different character's burst. But that doesn't mean she's bad without it. That LD, the LD boards really helped her out. She gets a bit more attack. She gets regen skills on her most important skill, which is Hell's Judgment, which is fantastic. but her Brave potencies are still, compared to other characters, really quite low. So she doesn't do as much damage like regularly. The fact that she has the Brave regen does help her out a great deal, and the fact that Hell's Judgment is 100% AoE damage does do the job for damage. But there are more damaging characters out there than Ultimecia, especially considering how many turns that she likes to spread herself out across in order to get that damage done. And then Penelo is like your Swiss army knife of support characters. She does your healing, she does your battery, she does Intercession. I still think is one of the best EX attacks in the game. It does everything that you want it to do. Instant turn count. Reduce enemy bravery to 0. It providing more for her. Battery. It does everything that you'd want it to do. And now she has Ezunaga and an additional buff in her LD. She just kind of does everything you need her to do. But because the majority of her buffs are framed buffs, sometimes it can be difficult to put party members together with her, because there are a lot of characters that rely on their own framed buffs, Ultimecia actually being one of them. That means that your third party member needs to be somebody quite strict. However, Kefka had this problem with debuffs, and I never had a problem using Kefka, so I don't plan to have a problem using Penelo either. If you have Balthea though, there is an argument to be held that if Ezunaga is the thing that you're looking for in Penelo and you already have Balthea, you do already have a character that can do that and has the Dispel instead of all of the regular sort of buffing capabilities that Penelo has. But I do still think that having both of them in your back pocket is fantastic, and Penelo, she's just all round good. I'm personally going to be putting tickets into Penelo, hoping that she's nice to me. And then if she's nice to me, I might pull on Ultimecia. Although I might also wait, because I say this with every burst character, wait and see if you get her burst through any of the other banners that are coming around, because we're going to get free pulls on these. We've got a free pull coming on Jack, and then Cryo will be coming out and we'll be getting... she'll have Ultimecia's burst on there as well. So perhaps wait and see how that goes. If I get the burst while pulling to somebody else, then I'll be more inclined to go and look for her LD. So now lastly we come to Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to make your voice heard and let everyone know whether you would or wouldn't pull on any particular banner and why. Now for the purpose of this, I've actually consolidated Ultimecia and Penelo's banners into one, because at the end of the day, even though there are two different banners, it's still a case of whether you're going to be spending resources or not at this particular time. So in terms of the numbers, people are pretty excited for this batch of banners one way or another, with 66% of people saying that they're going to be using tickets, 32% of people saying that they're going to be using gems, and just 2% of people saying that they're not going to be pulling on either one of these banners. So it seems going by off the comments and the things that I've seen, it seems like people are more excited for Penelo than they are for Ultimecia, but that could be down to a lot of people who already have her LD from the first time that she came around, or any number of reasons. So going into some of the comments that we've seen here, Proto Mega says, I was saving my tickets for these three banners, so these two and then Jack that will be following it. Ultimecia LD with her boards makes her very powerful. Penelo is buff princess with cleansing ability through her LD, she's too good to not ticket for. It's interesting because it's there's a lot of people that are very excited for Penelo, myself included, and yet I still don't really want to use gems on this banner. There's something that's holding me back from this, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. Doma Dragoon says, I plan on putting some tickets on both sides of the Heretics banner since I don't have Ultimecia's LD, but I will focus on Penelo's side. This is where I am with it. While a good character, I never liked Ultimecia's kit as much as I thought I would. Penelo, on the other hand, has been a support I've always been happy to use both on the field and at her call. I hope for luck in my pull so I can bring me to life. Now, I actually quite like Ultimecia's kit, as of her EX, but I think that her LD was a little bit lacking when it came out last time, and then to have the LD boards regenerate Hell's Judgment and give her a little bit more power. I think she's really fun to build around, even if she isn't the strongest character out there, and having turn deletion is still a thing. But Penelo is definitely a character a lot of people are going to be looking into. Also, I'm going to ignore the Evanescence reference there, but I'm going to be doing that through choice. Farbear here says, after 120k investment for Ramses Burst, I'm sticking only to my allotted gems for Penelo, as I have Ultimecia LD from the first go around. Penelo now has a good number of generic buffs and cleanses the party of debuffs before putting them on, while now also having a new initial and max Brave aura, while also giving 20% increase in Brave gain. Brave Overflow. Just Brave Overflow that's been gained, making it easy to plug into any party. Also, her costume is probably the best costume that has come in the game so far. She is... easy to plug into any party. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that because there are a lot of characters that just don't gel very well with her. But luckily, they all tend to be more support line characters anyway. So there are a lot of characters that do work really well with her, which is why people are as excited for her as they are. And yes, that costume is absolutely stunning. Orbacan says, I'm going in with gems for Ultimecia. I started right when her Lost Chapter came out, and by the time I figured out how the game worked, her banner left, and I've been dying to get her ever since. She's always been a favourite of mine, and I can't wait to see her on my team finally. Oh, and I'll probably give Penelo around 300 tickets since her LD looks pretty good too. So it seems like it's a win all around, like at least for most of the people here. A massive thank you to all of my patrons for casting their votes and their comments, as well as always with every Would You Pull section. But like, basically, as long as you get something from these banners, it seems like a win one way or another. So that's going to be all for this video. I say that as if it's a short video, and it's probably not. So thank you very much for watching. Let me know in the comments below whether you're planning on pulling for Ultimecia, Penelo, or even both of them. And obviously, let me know how it all goes after the banners go live this Tuesday or Monday, depending on where you are in the world. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell for notifications for any future videos I might be making. And I shall catch you next time, ready for Jack's Would You Pull banner. So thank you very much again, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.